Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Bricks King podcast, where I'm going to bend your ear about Lego, review those amazing bricks of plastic, and discuss what is new and up and coming around the Lego world. I'm your Minifigure host, Matt. Let's build on it. Welcome in, everybody. How are we doing today? We are wrapping up, believe it or not, we are finally wrapping up season number 4 of Lego Masters here in the United States. We do have a winner, and I want to share it with you because I think it is super important. The season was much better than last year. However, we will talk about it in a little bit. So let's go ahead and kick into it. The finale. Technically, it's episode number 11 because they just did this, remembering of seasons past and champions and builds and all that kind of stuff, whatever. So the interesting thing about this, and they knew this from the beginning, but it was reiterated again. They're like, hey, if you win Lego Masters, you're set. We're flying you to Bill in Denmark, and you are going to design your set with Amy and Jamie and a design team. No kidding. So the interesting thing about this build, these builds, they had to be 360 degrees. They couldn't just be, flat on one side and you have this landscape or diorama or something like that. It had to be all-encompassing, which was wild. And they wanted them to go big. And they all went fairly big. We'll talk about how big they actually went. So Sam and Nina were up first here, and they did the family tree of seasons. This is essentially wrapped around Sam and Nina to a certain degree, but basically Sam, going through his life and different things as far as the seasons go. So this tree, when they wheeled this thing out, it was about 5 feet tall. It was wild. So this is a diorama build, and on each leaf of the seasons, and then there's a fifth leaf. Well, I guess it's not really a leaf at the top, but the leaves are iconic to the season. Snow and winter, for those of you that, I guess in a northern hemisphere, I guess that's how that works. Well, I don't know. Anyway, so in the winter season, it was a build of him and his mom and his grandma, and they're in the kitchen. They're doing some stuff. By the way, these are all brick-built human-esque characters. On the spring leaf, they had this garden party that was going on. One of the brick-built characters was actually motorized. I'm not really sure what he was doing. It looked like he was fishing. That was kind of cool. I liked that. In summer, it was him and his garden, like his actual veggie garden, and he was harvesting veggies and stuff like that. That was kind of neat. As a green thumb myself, I love gardening. Then in fall, it was with his mom's balcony garden. I guess, I don't know anything about balcony gardens. I know people in the city have them. I just don't know how big they are and stuff like that. Anyway, that was kind of neat. And then at the top, all of the family is reunited. They're together. Everybody's, I guess, current ages that they are or whatever. The build was really nice. It was a tree with these leaves, different colors for the different seasons and things. The builds actually looked pretty darn good. It felt, you could definitely feel what was going on. There just seemed to be a lack of something. And we'll touch on it here in a moment. Anyway, so Amy mentioned, because we always have to talk about what the judges here, Amy wanted more color to frame the scenes. And I kind of agree with her. I just don't know how you would do it. So, for instance, the winter scene, they're on this, I believe it was a white leaf. They're in the kitchen. How cool would it have been to frame it with like snow around it or something like that? I don't know. I don't know if that, obviously it's possible, but in this time frame, it was a 24-hour build. And those of you that are new to Lego Masters type stuff, it doesn't mean they're building for 24 straight hours. They do this, they do this, they do this. It's a multiple day build. Jamie really liked the size of this thing. I agree. The size was crazily huge. I did not expect that to be what it was, and it was. But, I had mentioned something was missing. Maybe it is more color. Like Amy said, maybe we're missing more color. Maybe we're missing something else, but I don't know what it is specifically. Maybe it's like, I thought about it and I thought, well, is it more detail? No, the scenes are pretty detailed. I mean, they are pretty darn detailed. I don't really think that is what is missing, but something is definitely being left out somewhere at some point in time. So then we move on to Christopher and Robert. They did something called the World Wonderliner. It's a massive, massive plane. I'm using this word massive, and it's still gigantic, titanic. Titanic is what this thing should be described as. It is honestly one of the most spectacular plane builds I have ever seen for its size. And this thing, when I say it's titanic, it is 8 feet by 8 feet. Yeah, that was not a misprint or anything like that. 8 feet by 8 feet. And this thing is pretty darn tall, and it's thick. The wings on this thing are incredible, and they don't touch the ground, believe it or not. So inside of the fuselage, inside the area of this plane, you have these 3 different settings. And in between each setting, you have these rainbow bridges that attach to each of the 3 builds, which are their most memorable excursions, moments, icons, important things in their life. Not to mention that these builds are essentially floating in the clouds. Like they had done it in a way where it looks like there are clouds inside of the fuselage, and these builds are kind of within it, above it. So that was really cool. Just the floating feeling inside. I mean, you think of like Dreamliner, Wonderliner, you think of these dream-esque, escapades and picturesque scenes. It's just something really cool. So the first one they discussed had to do with Nairobi, Kenya. I believe Christopher said he went there on a mission. And this was interesting because he said he went there to teach computer things, IT things, and also teach about Lego and I guess building with Lego. So that was kind of cool. This was a really neat tree. It wasn't very big, but it was kind of unique. It's a specific tree. I'm not sure what it is. I don't believe if he said it or not. Anyway, the next one that we moved on to was the Forbidden City, and it's from Robert's roots in China and his parents' immigration to the United States. It was really kind of a neat little build with this Chinese sculpture type building. I thought that was really nice, hitting those roots and stuff like that before the transition to the United States and all that involves, which I can only imagine is a headache. And then lastly, they had this joint theme build idea, and it was the Colosseum. And so Robert had mentioned they took a cruise through Italy, around Italy, not through Italy, and they experienced the grandeur of everything in Italy, and then obviously the Colosseum. So they built this little brick-built Colosseum. I thought that was kind of cool. Not anything like the Colosseum that was actually done, which is a tedious build in its own right. However, it's still really cool. So as far as the build goes, Jamie called this thing an engineering marvel. Quote, an engineering marvel. There's really no other way to describe it. 8 feet by 8 feet. The idea that the wings are not touching the ground. I mean, this thing is gorgeous. And they even went so far as, you think of like Dreamliner, Wonderliner and stuff like that. They actually put Z's on the tail of the plane, brick-built Z's into it, to like you're sleeping, you're in this realm. Super cool idea. Amy loved the imagination and the creativity. Those were her comments. So I agree. The imagination was there. The creativity. Yeah, I could definitely see it. I would have liked some more. However, I thought it was really well done. So Paul and Nolita were up next. They did this thing called the Christmas Eve on a Cliff. And this is essentially some kind of building that is on a rocky cliff. I wish there was more snow that was on this thing. That would have looked kind of cool. However, the building of this was gorgeous. I loved the angles of the roof. I thought that was really well done. How they kind of, it wasn't even a 90-degree angle. It was less than that. It was more of an obtuse angle, but it was really, really well done. And they weren't identical segments. Like if you were to look at this from the side, the roof on the left and the roof on the right are not the same lengths, giving you a different angle on each. I thought that was kind of neat. And then The other thing about this, I thought it almost felt like a ski country-esque cabin. And we don't have skiing here in Texas. There's nothing down here because it's way too warm. I mean, I'm still gardening and it's the middle of December. Outside, I'm still gardening because, we haven't had a freeze yet. And we probably won't have one until January. However, with that in mind, it felt very much so like that. And, the building seemed to fit that. And then you have the mountain idea, this thing hanging on a cliff. I thought that was kind of neat. So you definitely feel that. So the scenes resemble family things during Christmas Eve with their family. So there's part of this is outside with a snowball fight. I thought that was kind of cute. In the kitchen with the cooking with the family, mom and grandma. And Nalita even mentioned that they even had brick built smoke to simulate their mom burning things that Nalita had brought up. Then we move on to the living room. And their kids that are looking at the gifts under the tree. Of course, who doesn't do that? There's also someone sitting in the corner because they were a little bit naughty. I thought that was kind of a neat little touch there. And there's a sled that is going down in the backyard that is motorized with someone sledding. So you incorporate power functions into that. I thought that was a really cool little touch. The exterior of this thing looked great. I love the mountainside. Like I said, I wish there was more snow hanging or in the area, but really impressed by it. Jamie said that he loved how they showed their growth from challenge to challenge. I agree. Did I or did I not in the beginning of this absolutely tear them apart? Maybe not that bad, but they were lacking. I hated their fire truck. I thought it was one of the ugliest builds of that competition and honestly of the season. Really, really did not like it. But they have definitely, throughout the last however many weeks, they have really came about and they have really turned into something special. Amy said that she loved how you can feel the heart in the build, and you absolutely can. You can feel the love. You can feel the family. You can feel the vibe of the holiday. You just have it all there. And they did a really good job. I honestly think they did a better job with their diorama-esque scenes than Sam and Nina did, in my opinion. So the judges were asked to choose a winner. First, they had to choose who was finishing in third. And unfortunately, that was Paul and Nalita. And I understand why they chose them. The size of their build was not nearly the size compared to the other two. Did not meet that mark whatsoever. I thought it had great detail, great attention to detail, a lot of cool things. And like Amy had mentioned, you could definitely feel the emotion in it. So they are out. So that leaves Sam and Nina, Christopher and Robert, Sam and Nina, however you want to label it, down to the final two. And I was really kind of not surprised because Christopher and Robert won. I told you weeks ago that this was going to happen. They are just heads, tails, feet, elbows above everybody in this competition. They were. And that doesn't mean a slight to anybody else. They just consistently destroyed the opposition every single time. Every single time. They never ended up in the bottom two. Paul and Nalita never ended up in the bottom two. But there was no question who had the best build. No question in my mind. And I think they absolutely chose the best for what it was this entire season. And we'll talk about the build as far as what it becomes as a set. That'll be kind of fascinating to see. So our basement dwellers, obviously none of these were really basement dwellers. You could say that Paul and Nalita were, but they are not. They are just the third place. They're on the podium. But to end the season with basement dwellers, we talked about it last week. Pretty much everybody that hit number 2, they were out. And it sucks. It absolutely sucks to be able to have that. So final power rankings as we go. Paul and Nalita finish in third because they finished third. Sam and Nina finished second. And obviously Christopher and Robert were at the top. They were at the top for a few weeks. Nobody could jump them, and they just stayed consistent. They were never near the bottom. They were mid to towards the top. Mid is even generous. They just showed everything that they could. The build, I am curious to see how the design team handles this. Obviously, you're not going to get an 8x8 build that has 10,000 pieces or however many it had. It had a lot. There's no way in hell that's going to happen. However, I do believe they could get this down to a rough size of like a Lego City airplane. I would be okay if this were at a $200 price point. I think I would be okay. I don't know that it's going to be that much. I tried to run it through my brain like, well, what is the scale going to look like? What is going to be the central focus? And obviously you want those 3 builds to be the central focus, but I'm not really sure how everything is going to come about. Now, this was recorded over the summer, so we're not going to see any kind of build for at least a year. That's just how these things go. It's not like, oh, they made it. These designs, these builds are done and they sit for 18 months before they're released to the public. Anyway, so it's going to take some time. I am curious to see what it looks like. So some final thoughts here on the season. I thought the season was pretty good. It definitely picked up steam at the end. And I hate to say this, but once you got some of the fluff out of the way, you actually got down to teams that you knew were going to go hard the entire time to the end. I'm still a little surprised that Emily and Kelly lasted as long as they did. I'm surprised when Lewis and Alex left. Did not see that one coming. The rest, though, you just had a feeling like, okay, your days are on borrowed time. That you are not going to last for very much longer. And a lot of them didn't. And I honestly believe they got it right. I think these are the 3 best teams. Sam and Nina, Paul and Nalita, I think you could probably put 2A, 2B. I think they're on the same line. Nobody was on the same line as Christopher Robert. Not just because they won it, but because they dominated. It just wasn't close. So with that said, the season was exquisite. I hope you guys had fun watching it, if you watched it, or at least listened to the synopsis of it. The only thing I wished is that we were able to do the interviews with the people not voted off, obviously, but that left the competition. But the thing is, when you're somebody that has a full-time career that is not Lego, times just don't meet up sometimes. And there was no way I was going to be able to swing 3 o'clock Central Time ever, without taking a day off. Those of you that are teachers out there, that is very few and far between because of all the work that comes with it and the fact that I just don't want to be away from work. So hopefully in the future, they can do better about that. They've done way better in the past. I know that there is somebody different running that kind of stuff this year. So from the production team, whatever you want to call them, hopefully in the future that can change. So that is the only thing that I wish we could have had this year. But that's going to wrap it up. And I hope you are wrapping up your things, tossing them under the tree if you celebrate Christmas, Hanukkah, whichever you celebrate, Kwanzaa. I don't know what else is out there, but it's coming. It's coming fast. I know Hanukkah's already going on. So until we meet again, I'm your minifig host, Matt. Let's build on it.